Hello. Today, as we are going through the skeletal system, I want to highlight a disease associated with the skeletal system called Osteogenesis Imperfecta. If you're good with your word roots, osteo, as we went from yesterday, we talked about bone is bone, osteocyte, bone, genesis, right, create, come from, right, formation, all right, so bone formation, and then imperfecta, I think is for stands on its own, imperfect, right, imperfect bone formation. And this is a picture of a broken bone. Maybe you can identify that from yesterday's work. And with this particular disease, often movies are not very good at portraying things, and even in this case might be a little less than ideal, but osteogenesis imperfecta is also known as brittle bone disease, which is highlighted in the two movies, Glass and Unbreakable. I don't know if you've seen those movies, but if you had, you might have a little background on it a little bit. But it is a real disease. Brittle bone disease is real. People with brittle bone disease have weaker or weakened bones. It is genetic, and the inheritance of it is typically autosomal dominant, which means it's just a regular chromosome, and it's passed on. And if you have one of the genes, then you would have some sort of part of the condition. There is a form that they've recently found that is sex-linked recessive to the X, but that's a little bit rare. I'm going to ignore that for the rest of the presentation. Just know that's out there. The genes affected are collagen. It can be either chromosome 7 or 17. And collagen is a connective tissue, very important to bone formation and bone production. It's a nice fiber, and if you remember from the skeletal system earlier on, a couple of days ago, collagen is what you're born with instead of bone usually. But so it's this connective tissue. It's very it is important and vital for the production of normal bone. The symptoms, if you have brittle bone disease, obviously you have easily broken bones. The more severe types are going to have barrel-shaped chests. So triangular-shaped face, soft or discolored teeth, and blue sclera. Sclera is the white of the eye, so you get this bluish tint to the whites of your eye. And I've got a little picture here for you. So this is kind of an example of what you might see. So the whites of the eye become blue. And in looking at people with osteogenesis imperfecta, here you've got a picture of your normal spongy bone, and you get the crisscross pattern that's being reinforced. Where we mentioned that the spongy bone is actually the cross-linking there help strengthen the bone. Well, if you have osteogenesis imperfecta, the collagen network that is helping those bones and those bone cells isn't as strong, or maybe some of that collagen is just lacking altogether, depending upon the type, and it's thinning, and you can see where it's the support network obviously is not going to be as good at support, and you can easily break if you hit, and there's a force impact can break some of these junctions, causing to a bigger fracture. And so again, looking at it from a different perspective here, you've got the compact bone, that dense bone on the outside, and then you've got the spongy bone on the inside. The spongy bone is really supporting and holding up the compact bone. So if I get a impact on this, and I've got the brittle bone disease, the force as it's being distributed throughout is going to be enough to break some of these connections, which then is not going to be able to hold up this dense compact bone, and it's going to cause a break. And it goes back to the collagen. So that's that part of it. There are different types of osteogenesis imperfecta, and I'm going to play this short video just briefly to kind of a picture of the different types.
Osteogenesis imperfecta is a genetic disorder where the bones are weaker, causing them to be more susceptible to fracture. It's often known as brittle bone disease. So osteogenesis imperfecta is a spectrum of disorders. It can be quite mild and not really cause any major problems at all, but for other patients it can be more severe, causing them to have multiple fractures, and this can end up affecting their mobility, and in some people they may even need to use a wheelchair.
My OI affects me on an everyday basis.
I've had to have my spine fused.
There's a lot of secondary issues as well.
I do need a lot more pain relief than many other people do.
And it also affects my hearing.
My arms are quite brittle compared to my legs because I have metal rods, which means I have to use a wheelchair constantly.
Things make us often more tired.
You might be seen as just being a bit lazy.
From that video, you can see there are many different severities and different levels of the osteogenesis imperfecta. And there are more than 4 diagnosable types. I think there's something like 17 or 18 different types of OI. But I think these are the 4 most common types. And they all deal with the collagen gene. There are some others that are a little bit different in the path in which they take to form the brittle bone. And looking over the other types, a lot of them are just lethal. So the mild form, type 1, is the most common. As I said before, it's autosomal dominant. And the mild form of type 1, the issue is the amount of collagen produced. Not so much that it's defective, but you just don't produce as much. My thought process there is that you've got one normal copy of the gene, one defective gene. So the normal copy is producing, but the defective copy, for whatever reason, is not producing the collagen. Type 2, the severe. The most severe of these 4 types, it usually is lethal within just a few weeks of birth. And babies born type 2 have all sorts of broken bones at birth. Same with type 3, which is the most severe type. If you look at the wheelchaired people here, they probably have type 3. This is the most severe of the kinds that you can survive and live a long time. So they have the most fragile bones. I was watching a video earlier where this family, they all have it, and then I get type 3, and they all had 200 plus bones broken in their lifetime up to that point. A lot of these, and then type 4 here, which I think is kind of a mild to moderate, still fragile bones, but it's a little kind of between type 1 and 3. So you can imagine having this disease. I mean, even though the bones are weaker, the nerves are still there. So every time you break a bone, you think about breaking 200 bones. It's going to hurt every time. So that's pretty. I mean, it's so taking a look at just the different things. Just found this picture of the different types. So here you have the type 1, normal stature. Right? And the type 3, they're down here. They're usually short stature. The bones are deformed. And you can see another thing that happens with osteogenesis imperfecta is you have the curvature of the spine. You have it go out toward the back. It can form a hump, and it can also go kind of left or right, kind of curve left or right. You can see these individuals both have some pretty significant spine curvature, as well as bowing of the legs. So you see the bowing of the legs here, the way that the bone is growing and set. So the type 3, you're going to be they break a lot of bones, and they also they're going to be bound in wheelchairs, and they're going to be shorter in stature. In type 4, you can see the curvature here of this type 4 individual, and I'm not sure what they're highlighting here. Maybe a little bit of offsetting of the leg bone. Anyway, I thought that was pretty cool. So there's different types of different levels that you can have for this disease, from the mild, where you're breaking bones, maybe a few here and there, versus 200 plus and 30, 40 years of life. The other thing to keep in mind with this, in reading about it, is for some of these cases, you actually get better, and you don't break as many bones. You get older after puberty. your bones aren't growing as much, and you stop breaking them. Then one final thought: as I was doing this, I came across that last week was Osteogenesis Imperfecta Awareness Week, and they have their little kind of yellow wishbone is their awareness, and yellow is their color. Just thought I'd share that with you guys. Anyway, I thought this was interesting. All sorts of stuff out there, and have a good one. See you later.